Okay, so this is my other idea that I had last week, and what this is smokable oxytocin. Again, something that sounds maybe a little bit silly, but I'm trying to find alternatives for people that are averse to taking oxytocin through needles. Now, again, this is nothing that I can sell. This is a prescription thing, but I just wanted to personally explore this and find out for myself whether this was viable, and turns out it is. The big concern with a smokable oxytocin would be the heat degradation of the potency of it over time. Now, in our imaginations, we might think that we're going to take one hit and, oh no, all my oxytocin has been destroyed, or, oh, I shook it once, it's all destroyed. Let me tell you from personal experience, it's not quite that fragile. Here's a study about oxytocin being taken to remote African villages for the purposes of healing uterine lining post-birth to prevent post-birth deaths in remote areas that don't have electricity or adequate medical staff. Oxytocin can be very healing when injected for that, and that's actually one of the main things that it's prescribed for is birthing issues. So, very reparative to that tissue damage. Now, what they did, and you can go through this yourself, I'll link this in the description. But what they did is they put it in, let's say 120 degree Fahrenheit weather for a month, and they assessed the potency before, which is actually slightly over 100%, so they had it just slightly overdosed. And at the end of 31 days, if I remember correctly, let's see, up to 120 days, and temperature cycling up to 135 days at, 30, 40, 50 degrees Celsius, and they used HPLC UV method. Okay. What they found was that over the course of that long stretch, heat cycling and the high temperatures and everything, that's pretty extreme. I'm never going to put my whole, stash of peptides in 120 degree Fahrenheit weather. It's going to be kept in the fridge, right? So what happened? Well, what they found was that there was about an 18 to 20% loss in potency. And we're talking about, what is that, 4 months of high heat? I thought it was just 30 days, but maybe I'm reading this wrong. I might have to go back through it. But read through it yourself and see what I mean. And so let's say, for instance, that the temperature in my little space here, my workspace, is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit, which I believe is, 20-something degrees Celsius. But it's 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And I just leave this out. I've got a buddy that's a local buddy that uses the injectable oxytocin, and he's never refrigerated his bottle, and he's never lost potency. And he's been doing this for 6 months now, or 5 months, something like that. And he's got bottles that have lasted him for 4 months because he takes a very small dose, and he just keeps it in his, master suite bathroom and doesn't worry about it. So what that tells me is that the loss of potency is actually a lot slower and a lot less extreme than we might think. And who cares? You're not going to kill this peptide when it's already complexed, and when it's already solubilized, it's in a little bit of a protective layer, because this uses glycerin, this uses water, which isn't going to protect it a whole lot. But because of the gel type nature of it, and because of the way that it interacts with the heating element, only the little tiny bit at a time that is right nearest the heating element or in the surface, which is exposed to the heat from the heating element, is going to be majorly affected to atomize it and get it into your lungs. The rest of it is never going to have time in this very brief. I can guarantee you that the rest of the bulk of the liquid was not touched, and it won't be touched. So what will happen is most of this will stay 72 degrees all the time, and only just a very little bit touching the element, and the very little bit on the surface that's being heated is going to be affected at any given time. So this is 120 days of heat cycling at 30, 40, 50 degrees Celsius, which is, 120 degrees, 125, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. I'm terrible at that. But you get the idea. And all that happened was it lost 20% potency over the course of 4 months of abuse. This is going to last about 3 days, 4 days, right? And the heat cycling is never going to get that extreme. So yes, it does work. Now, what are the effects? If I take 2 big pulls of this, let me back up here. This isn't just oxytocin. this is NAD plus as well. And I might have made it too strong. So I'll take a couple of pulls of this. Now, if it was just Oxytocin, I would feel relaxed, a little bit creative and mellow. The NAD plus gives a little extra oomph. And to be honest, I think it's actually been driving a little bit of fat loss for me over the last few days of experimenting with this. So what can happen is if you take too much of it, you can make your skin crawl, okay? That's what happened to me the first time I tried it. The very first night that I threw some of this together, I didn't complex it. I just put it together and smoked it. I put up that post, little community post, and I was just saying, hey, this is great, right? This is interesting. Well, what I found was the next day when I went to use it again, all of the NAD plus was gone. I'd gotten that big dose all in 1, 2, or 3, 4 hits, right? And so what that means is that it fell out of solution, and I know that from experience. Even with injectable oxytocin, if you do not have it properly solvent in solution, it will crash out, and when you inject it, even though it's in oil, it'll migrate and absorb into your body quickly, and you'll get the heart palpitations and stuff like that. And that's one of the ways that I used, one of the side effects that I used as a guide for making proper oxytocin that does not do that, that will give you an even distribution over time. So if you're getting a one big bolus hit of oxytocin, it's in and out, that's not going to be anabolic whatsoever. So this is not long enough acting to be anabolic. What this is for focus, being mellow, creative, talkative, whatever you need. This is basically just a pleasant nootropic experience that only lasts about maybe 10 to 20 minutes per use. But let me tell you, a milliliter or two goes a long ways. And so what it's got is a healthy dose of NAD+, a healthy dose of oxytocin, and I've actually complexed both of them now so that neither one of them come out of solution, and the oxytocin is actually better protected through the encapsulation of HPBCD, like I always use, but it actually gives it a bit of a cushion and keeps that NAD+ more evenly distributed. So now I don't get the skin crawls, now I don't have any of that crazy effects. It's just the oxytocin effects as normal, and then a nice even dose of NAD+ for the metabolic help and the mitochondrial health and all the other things that might bring. I don't like to take too much NAD+ because I have trouble with methylation, so I end up getting a little bit anxious and a little bit amped. So this is a nice way for me to control that dose, enjoy it when I want it, put it down when I don't. It's just kind of an interesting thing. I don't even know why I'm talking about it because I can't really do much with it. But hey, I made a thing, you know, so, and it's pretty cool. And, you know, some of my, my girlfriend, like in many situations, I like this, she's coming from a background where, oxytocin will help people that have had like more serious, like long-term depression, clinical depression, major depressive disorder, things like that. I don't think she's had major depressive disorder, but all of us have had some mental health struggles, and this is one of those things that will actually help elevate your thinking, because like I said in previous videos, oxytocin will actually raise your dopamine and your serotonin levels. So just like an antidepressant, but instantly and pinpoint. And the funny thing is people have asked me a lot of times, when you come off of like an oxytocin cycle, are there drawbacks? Is there a refractory period where you just feel, ugh? No, there's not. And I don't know why. It could be, in my case, because I take a low dose of paroxetine, 20 milligrams a day, and I've been doing that for 10 years now. And so maybe that's why. Maybe I have a safety net that not everybody would have, but I haven't seen that with anybody else that has tried it when they've taken breaks from it or anything like that. There's definitely a difference, but you just go back to normal. It's not like so you go from enhanced to normal, not from enhanced to in the ground, okay? So for whatever it's worth, this is a thing. It was interesting to me, and I just thought I'd share it. And does it work? Yeah, it does. So whatever.